A little while ago, we put out a post asking you guys for your biggest flute questions. Now, you guys gave us lots of really great questions. Too many, I think, for one video. We're going to start today with just looking at some of the kind of flute technique questions. And next time we will dive into some more of the flute resources and buying new instrument questions. For those of you who don't know, my name is Tatiana. This is the Flute Practice, a space to help you learn the flute. And we usually do this with a lot of fun. Okay, let's dive right in. We actually got asked quite a few questions about high notes and how to play high notes. And because these are all related to each other, my explanations are going to be fairly related, I'm going to kind of group them together. And I'm going to start with our first question. With many beginners, including myself, when we venture into the high register, there is a sort of reverse squeak at random points, where the note comes out in the lower octave. Do I have any idea what's happening? And of course, how to fix it? This is such a common problem. We speak about cracking the note very often. So in future, that's what's happening. You are cracking the note. There's usually two ways that we can crack the note. Either we crack the note by dropping down to the low register, where we kind of get into that low octave, or we can sometimes kind of squeak the note up or crack up, where we kind of get the overtone of that note. Here's how that sounds. So cracking down, I'm going to get this kind of a thing, trying to play a C, and I get that kind of a thing. Or it can happen on a middle E. I'm trying to play a middle E and I get those kind of squeaks up. Now I am going to direct you to a video in the description down below that speaks a lot more about this. But really, it comes down to you not fully understanding this concept of airspeed and air direction. In order to play higher on the flute, we need higher airspeed and higher air direction. So when you're cracking down into that low register, usually what's happening is either your air is not being angled high enough, so you're not bringing those lips forward enough to get the airstream up, or you are not supporting enough, so you are not actually allowing enough forced air into the flute. A couple of things that can help. Firstly, I would absolutely recommend start by increasing the speed of the air. Now, it does not mean kind of squeezing out or forcing out the air. Actually, it's a little bit more about just allowing the air to come from your nice belly. And an effective way to feel this is to actually just play those notes on a short, sharp hoo, like you're blowing out a birthday candle, like that. You could also imagine you're blowing on a little piece of paper, like that. That was way more effective than it should have been. So just feeling those nice pulses, and then you can sustain a pulse like that and feel that nice work that is happening here. You can also just say ha and feel that nice kind of feeling, or say it softly, ha, and then say it loud, ha, and feel the engagement of some of those muscles. It is not squeezing inward, it is not forcing, it's just really kind of like a buoyancy that we have in our abdominal area to help support the air. So here's what's going to sound like. I'm going to do on the C a hoo, or on higher notes, like that. So really short, sharp, and then I can try it with my tongue. And now I'm going to sustain the note. Now C is the most challenging note, so you might want to start this on a lower note and work your way up to it. Remember, if you are really giving good airspeed and you're doing this well and you're still cracking down, then it probably means that there's something going on in your embouchure. And there are a lot of things that can go wrong here. You could be too tight, actually. Yes, that's right. You could be kind of biting down, which is actually forcing the air down again. You could just not be moving that lower jaw forward enough. That can also happen. It's possible that you just haven't yet developed the muscles to really control the opening of the lips. That does take time. So if you're struggling with this problem, go check out that video. It explains it a little bit more in depth, but start by increasing the speed of the air and see if that helps. Another question is, any tips on playing the high register A flat? So for those of you who don't know, that's the third register A flat all the way up here. It's a nasty note. It's incredibly resistant. It's a little bit like the F sharp. The F sharp is also quite a resistant note. Now, going back to that nice explanation that we had about airspeed and air direction, the biggest thing for the high register is that we do need quite good airspeed. There's kind of like a minimum required airspeed to get into that high register. But the angle of air is an interesting one in the high register, because sometimes we think the angle of the air has to actually go up in the high register because that's what I just said earlier, right? It has to go up. The problem is if the airspeed is quite high and we angle the air too high up, we get really sharp and shrill. And so in order to balance out this intonation and get a nice round and open sound, we actually are going to start to want to lower the angle of the air again. So this means in your high notes in general, and A flat especially, you actually are going to want to open up. You're going to want to think of space between the back of the teeth. You're going to want to think of that nice O shape in the back of your throat, or imagine there's like a hot potato in the back of your throat. And then you're going to want to really make sure that you are playing from your support. You can do the same exercise that we did earlier on the A flat on those nice whoos, short, sharp from your belly. You should really feel your belly kind of pulsing outward as you do these. So we get the A flat. And we really just try and stay as relaxed and released as possible here. You could honestly even try and do this with a puffed out cheeks. Totally ridiculous exercise, but it really is helpful because it shows you don't need a lot of tension here. And this is the part that I think we often get wrong with the high notes, especially these high resistant notes, is we think we have to squeeze and kind of force them out with the embouchure, when really most of it is actually an air speed problem. We need good supported airspeed. So try this. Play your A flat, maybe work up to it from an F. So we're going to do F, G, and then to the A flat just to make it nice and easy. So already on the F, think of the space between the back of the teeth as O shape in your mouth, and just try and release these lips a little bit. The other secret here is to make sure you're not pulling those lips back against the teeth. So you want to bring those lips a little bit forward, away from the front teeth. I'm throwing quite a few ideas at you here because often the problem is not the same for everybody. Perhaps you are too tight, perhaps you're not supporting enough, perhaps you are kind of biting down. There may be a variety of issues that you are struggling with, so try a few things out and see what works for you. I really recommend experimenting when it comes to this. Another problem about the high register, this time about how to play notes quietly in the right rhythms and beautifully without passing out. Oh, do I hear you? So firstly, I just want to say you need to separate these issues, right? Start by first figuring out the rhythms, perhaps play it an octave lower just so that you get the correct rhythms, or work out the rhythms and just do the fingerings without actually playing. Can be really, really, really helpful so that you get rid of the tone problem. Then come back to the tone problem and start practicing high, soft notes. To play softly on the flute, we are going to need to once again balance out the airspeed and air direction. To play softly, in general, we actually just need slightly slower air. Of course, we can't have too slow air, otherwise we're not going to get any notes in that high register, they're just going to crack down. So we need to make sure we have a kind of base level of airspeed, and then we need to balance the air direction. And in comparison to those loud high notes, where we actually want you to think about blowing the air down, for soft high notes, we're actually going to think of the air up again. We can bring those lips really quite forward, almost imagining your lips are kind of forming like a tube or like a straw, a little bit forward. You can think of kind of like a pouting lip movement. That can be quite helpful as well. But if you can imagine, and sorry for my weird face here, but if you can imagine the kind of inside fleshy wet parts of the lips kind of coming forward to form a bit of a tube and a straw. Not extreme, just a teeny tiny bit, and you can play with this to see how soft can you get those high notes. Here's the fascinating thing about playing soft high notes. You need a lot of support. So you're going to take a big, really wonderfully expanded breath, be nice and full and released, but you're not going to blow out all the air. So it's slow air, but there is still a lot of air in your body. You'll feel quite like a fullness or like a gentle pressure in your body as you play those soft notes. You are not going to squeeze your embouchure. Your embouchure needs to be actually really, 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 really relaxed. Okay, this is quite counterintuitive, but you really need to have quite a relaxed, gentle embouchure and then a really nice, full supported feeling. So if I'm playing, I'm very, very, very small with my opening, but it's from coming forward and closing. I'm not squeezing, I'm not doing... Very, very, very ineffective way actually to play soft, and it just sounds airy, sharp and horrible. So forward with the lips, gentle, find your tube, lots of support. I really encourage playing around with this a lot, so just mess around with soft notes and see how soft and gentle can you get them. But a little bit of practical moment here, like do not try and play too softly. We don't have that huge dynamic range on the flute, I'm afraid to say it. And so sometimes you just need to be practical and actually just play a little bit louder. Okay, another really great question. A fairly advanced player saying that it came to her attention that she blows too much air out. She's asking, how do I play louder if I don't blow a lot of air out and without running out of air? So this comes to, how do I play louder if I need to use a lot of air? Okay, so first thing I want you to understand is that loud sound on the flute is going to come from a little bit more air, but actually primarily going to come from faster air. And blowing more air into the instrument isn't necessarily the only way that we can speed up the air. One of the ways that we can speed up the air is, of course, by just closing the opening of the lips. A little bit like you would if you were holding a hose pipe. So if you're holding the edge of a hose pipe and you close the opening a little bit, the water that's going to come out is going to be a lot faster. So we don't necessarily want to just think about blowing more air into the instrument. We want to think about speeding up the air. Speed and direction of air again, right? Well, here we go. So what you are going to think about doing is kind of focusing the air a little bit as you increase the speed. This will also help you to actually create a sense of resistance so that the air doesn't just disappear out of the body. But because we are increasing the speed of the air, we are going to need to reduce the angle, otherwise it's going to go sharp. So we want to increase the speed of the air, we're going to need to drop the angle of the air. And this turns out to be quite helpful because what we do when we're dropping the angle of the air is we are actually blowing the air more down into the flute, which results in more air going through the instrument as well, which actually helps once again for you to play louder. So just as an example, this would just be blowing more air into the instrument. Yeah, it's loud. It also sounds a little bit like a train whistle. So not very pretty or effective. Here's I'm going to now. So I'm closing the lips slightly. I'm going to find a slightly more focused embouchure. I'm going to drop my jaw, think oh, and get that air down and let the upper lip follow. So I'm really kind of thinking getting that air down. Even cracking it. That would just be blowing harder. So again, the secret here is I'm focusing the lips and I'm blowing down. In order to speed up the air though, I'm also not just kind of squeezing out the air. I'm actually thinking of this lovely open expansion. So again, going back to those ha's, so you can think ha or ha. And if you think of the ha, you get quite a nice kick here from your muscles and actually a kind of opening expansion. Ha! I told you guys we were going to have fun. Okay, one of my favorite questions. What is my strategy? What is the most efficient way to practice a piece so that you don't make the same mistakes over and over again? Such a great question. So the first thing that I do is I break up my piece into smaller sections. So I break it up not only into kind of like the bigger musical sections, like this is the A section of the piece, then we've got the B section and then the A section comes back. Not only those kind of bigger sections, but even breaking it up into like 2, 3 or 4 measures at a time. So I break it up into small little sections like that. Then I like to start from the back of the piece. So I start learning from the ending. Why? Because the ending is usually the bit that we forget about. Also, when we're playing it eventually, it's the part that we need to know the best because we're going to be tired by the time we get there. It also prevents me from doing the number one worst thing that you can ever do when you're learning a piece, which is just to play it through over and over again. Please do not practice like this. You will definitely start making mistakes, and practice them in if you do this. So I start from the back. I'm doing maybe 4 measures at a time, max. And now I'm learning things slowly. I'm breaking it up. So I'm really going through it phrase by phrase, very, very, very slowly, and figuring out what are the difficult bits, what are the tricky bits, and how can I solve them. This might mean that I only learn like 2 lines at a time, but that is fine. I'm immediately going over to using some of the good practice tools that I have, like practicing it in rhythms, practicing it slowly with the metronome, practicing it in like different groupings or backwards, just giving myself the possibility to calmly and slowly learn the notes. Later on, I'm going to go back over it and start like pulling out the difficult sections and working on those separately. I'm still not playing through the piece. Like when I come to a practice session, I've now learnt the notes, I've kind of got 90% of it down. I'm still not just going to play through it. I'm still pulling out the difficult sections and just working on them. And only right near the end am I going to start playing it through quite consciously to figure out where the problems still are, where the mistakes still are. And then I'm going to start sewing it all together and putting it together with an accompaniment, if there is an accompaniment. So the secret is break it up, do it slowly, and work very systematically. And don't just play through it. I'm actually thinking of doing kind of a little challenge where I'm going to show you guys my full process of learning a piece from beginning to end. So stay tuned for that. Another really great question is, how do I get my fingers to move faster? Such a good question. And to this, I'd say there are a couple of ways that you might want to approach this, or better said, there are a couple of causes why your fingers might not be moving as fast as you would like them to. Firstly, check your hand position. What are your hands doing? If you do not have a good hand position, so if it is not ergonomic, so it's not functioning in the most natural way possible, you probably are going to get in your own way. There's going to be tension in your hands, and your hands are going to end up not being able to move as freely and quickly as they should, just because of the position that they're in. So the first thing I always would recommend that you do is check your hand position. Look what's going on there. Then I would check how much tension are you using. Even if you've got a good hand position, you could still be gripping your instrument, and any excessive tension is going to get in the way of fast, free fingers. Then I would make sure that I'm doing some really good technical exercises slowly, yes, slowly, and building them up step by step over time. I also want to make sure that you're not just trying to get fast fingers, but rather that you are really going for even, consistent fingers. I think this is sometimes much more important than quick, fast fingers, because actually impressive flute playing sounds even and in control, not just fast. So when you're doing work, you're working through exercises slowly. Rhythm practice is really great, so playing things through in different rhythms. Make sure that you are going for even, controlled fingers, not just speed. In fact, I think sometimes speed should be the byproduct of this type of practice, but if we make it the focus, it actually gets in the way more than anything else. A last really important question. My hands get tired when I play. Why is that? Before it didn't happen. Okay, really interesting question, and I would kind of have a couple of follow-up questions to you. I would probably ask you, is there anything else that you're doing maybe that's adding to kind of tiring out your hands? Maybe there's a new activity that you've started that's kind of making your hands more tired than they used to be. Sometimes with age though, to be very honest, our bodies become a little bit less resilient. And sometimes we just kind of go through phases where we are maybe more tense, we're more tight, and our hands are starting to get tired and sore. Maybe you've also increased your number of practice hours, like maybe you're suddenly practicing much more, and that's why your hands are getting tired. And actually something as simple as having a new instrument can really cause problems. So ask yourself, what has changed in the last couple of months or weeks? Has anything changed? And if nothing has changed, then it's possible that your body has changed, which is totally fine and totally normal, and you need to just take it easy. Yes, you can look at your hand position, because maybe even if it wasn't a problem before, now it is a problem, and now you need to look at it. It happens. I would advise take lots more breaks, take some nice breaks, do some nice stretches between, some movements between, just to kind of stretch everything out nicely, just to help those hands to get nice and warmed up and cool down before and after practice. And I would just really genuinely advise, don't overdo it. You actually can hurt yourself. So just take it easy, be gentle, and realize that it's not about what you practice, it's about how you do it. And when we do it well, we can actually do it very efficiently. Okay guys, those were plenty of questions. Please do ask your questions down below, or any follow-up questions. I love being able to help you guys with your practice problems. If you need a little bit more help and some really in-depth help with some of the stuff, then I can only encourage you, go check out one of our courses. We have a bunch of different courses, from tone courses, articulation courses, scale courses, and courses that really look at releasing tension and undoing bad habits. We're continually adding new courses and really trying to serve you guys and give you guys the answers to some of these questions in the most thorough and in-depth way that we can. These are pre-recorded online courses, which means you can have a flute teacher at your fingertips whenever you need it, but you can also work through the content in your own time at your own pace. And nobody even needs to hear you playing, so for you shy people out there, this is a great option. Happy practicing, and I'll see you guys with some more questions next time.